Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the One Spark Network. My name is Eric J. Hecker, and I am very happy to be here today. We are joined by Mr. Ben Moss, and he is one of the speakers at Snippy this year. It'll be his second appearance. He was there last year as well. And let me just give you a little bit of insight into what the Snippy event is. Snippy is a conference where leading experts converge to present the latest research on high strangeness, metaphysics, ancient civilizations, and astronomy. The event is held outdoors at the rugged and desert-swept King family orbit near Mosca, Colorado. Conference sessions are held in two large enclosed tents. Camping is encouraged and available for any size trailer, RV, or tent. Hotel options are available just 15 minutes from KFO in Alamosa, Colorado. The event dates are fixed to the final new moon of the summer, just before the autumnal equinox, ensuring optimal sky gazing and deep space observations. And if anybody is interested to find out more about tickets or anything regarding the event, feel free to go to snippy.space. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mr. Ben Moss. How are you doing today, Ben?
Doing good. How you doing?
Oh, I'm having a blast. I guess I'm having a better day than you so far.
Yeah, the sun is shining, and it's a good day.
Yes, absolutely. So, folks that don't know you, I would like to bring their attention to the fact that you're a MUFON investigator, which is very.
Previous.
Oh, previous. You're no longer doing that?
Yeah, I was an investigator, and then I was chief field investigator, and then I just branched off and formed the UFO guys with Tony Angiola, and I do my own investigations now because I'm just really busy with a lot of other aspects of life.
Fair enough. So no longer affiliated and an individual investigator of the paranormal, so to say. Um,
More
what
ufology.
or you followed? Um, what did your life look like before you became involved in UFO investigations? Where was your mind at? When did this start for you?
It started, I saw it with my father. My dad was a doctor, and he got a little TV from a patient, and we were watching. All of a sudden, this Walter Cronkite special came on, which dates me, but it was a special on UFOs, and I probably was about 6 or 7, can't remember, but it was fascinating. And so, being a big comic book guy, I would always go to the comic book store and collect Marvel comics. And then I started picking off all the UFO comics that I could see in the store. And back then, there was no internet. There was no way to find out about this stuff unless it was in these magazines. So I'd read all these interesting stories and see all these pictures, and got really interested in it. And then witnessed one in college and have seen, I think, 4 or 5 UFOs. I don't like the term UAP, but I've seen about 4 or 5 UFOs, and just got really interested. Wanted to figure out what it was all about. And this subject, the more you dig, the more questions you have, and
Hmm.
the truth is hard to pin down. That's how I got started.
Fair enough. As far as like actually getting into investigation, like what, I mean, you don't have to get too crazy with information, but what prior to being, into the investigations, what was your life like, your career, things like that?
I had about 40 jobs, bounced around a lot. The last 12, 14 years, maybe 15 years of my career were telecom. So I was in telecom, selling high-speed bandwidth and voice over IP and data cross connects and stuff like that. But I've always been in sales. So my degree in psychology kind of helped me in sales. I was at the University of Richmond and Ferrum College where I played tennis. So my passion back then was basketball first, then tennis, of course, women, and uh, and then I just got into with studying psychology. I was reading stuff like Carlos Castaneda and the out of body, Robert Moreau's
Mm-hmm.
journey out of body,
Yep.
and had some experiences myself where I kind of proved to myself that my consciousness could leave my body. Got into remote viewing, so I've always been interested in ghost hunting and UFOs and anything unusual that's call it supernatural, but it's really just something that you can't explain yet. Just like UFOs, it seems like the more stuff that comes out about UFOs, the more they're probably everything everybody imagines. They're extraterrestrial, they're ultra terrestrial, they're interdimensional. I think all those things are possible because it's a really strange universe, and you can't bend it down to one thing. If it's like the priest that came out recently that got fired for saying that UFOs are demons. That's a big leap of not faith, I would say. But yeah, it's just really interesting. I've always been interested in stuff that kind of baffles everybody else to see if I can figure it out. Of course, I haven't figured it out, but I've got a better handle on that. And I've always been inquisitive. I'm sure I was undiagnosed ADHD, ADH, or AD, can't even say it, ADD back in the day. Thank God I didn't get put on any of those drugs that kids are on now. But yeah, so always exploring, always trying to find something interesting. And UFOs and even the paranormal will definitely keep your attention. So it's just it's been a journey. Here I am today.
Ben, I guess during your, I guess going through the motions of your previous career, getting into the investigations as more of your primary effort and stuff like that, did you ever experience a period of like, say, like denial or a skepticism where you kind of thought like, is this field really worth my life's energy? Like, am I off the mark? Is this worth it?
No, no. I've seen too many cases, and the first cases I looked into were really solid. The more you looked into, like when Tony and I wrote the book on Socorro, kind of got into that, trying to figure out if it was the lunar lander or student hoax, which are the prevalent theories of the day. And after 5 years of investigating that, realized that none of that was true, and it was definitely what Lonnie Zamora said it was. It was the landing of probably an ET nuts and bolts craft. And then meeting everybody, knowing Don Schmidt and a lot of people that were involved with the Roswell incident. When I did a deep dive into Roswell, I realized that that was also a nuts and bolts crash. That it's funny, it's kind of mentioned. I know Spielberg talked about it and actually had a little bit of it in one of his movies before this disclosure movie. But yeah, I mean, there's when the thing about that case was when people were dying, because the witnesses were threatened with death, and so when people were dying, they had these unsealed affidavits. They said, "Look, this was true. I couldn't talk about it. Don't put this out until after I die." But this was all true, and so I have my own theory about disclosure. I don't believe it'll ever happen unless it's forced in some way, because there's just too many reasons not to let it out. The least of it being the government doesn't want to say, "Hey, look, there's shit flying around that we don't know what it is. We can't stop it. It can invade any airspace, but don't worry about it. Everything's under control," which it's not. So, a lot of people don't agree with that. But sorry, my dog is moving stuff around. But yeah, so it's just one of those subjects that you can never get to the bottom of. Kind of like psychology of the mind. It's very interesting. It's intriguing. It's not boring. And you have these cases that are very solid. And, there's a lot of hoaxes these days with AI. There's a lot of fake stuff, but it's pretty easy for me to tell what's fake and what's AI. And, um, you know, digging into one thing that's interesting is, and I've done this, is applying new technology to old photographs. And Ray Stanford, who recently passed, he had looked at the McMinnville photograph from McMinnville, Oregon, 1954, of that disc-shaped craft, and Tony and I broke that down and did some enhancement also, and that's a picture from 1954. But when you use modern technology, you can see a downdraft under that craft. There's some type of plasma or something coming under it, and the witness says that when it tilted towards them, they got hit with a wash of warm air. So a
Wow.
lot of these old photographs, when you analyze them, there's stuff in there that nobody saw 40, 50 years ago, but comes out now that there's no way they could have thought to hoax that, like the downdraft, it's look like a tornado under it that kind of funnels out at the bottom. There's another famous picture of a cigar-shaped UFO that has a trail coming out of it. But when you zoom into it, you can see the reflection of it in the river it's crossing over. You know, things that very hard to fake from photographs from the 1950s.
That's wild. I agree. It makes me think. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Beatrice Villarreal.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
She's going back and finding some. They're calling them plates. I guess some sort of old, photographs or something. Photographic plates from I think pre-1950s, and they're finding artifacts in them that don't necessarily match to the stars in the sky. So they're finding.
I know.
It's going right like what you're saying. Very interesting stuff. Just for clarity, how long have you been investigating things, Ben?
40 years.
40 years. Wow. Okay. So you've definitely
I'm old.
you've heard a lot of the stories then, and you've probably seen this recurring cycle of disclosure that they dangle in front of us.
Yeah, it's kind of, all these new people that are entered are saying things like instantaneous acceleration and stuff that we knew 40 years ago, and they're making it sound like they just discovered it and it's new. And I mean, Elizondo, I don't know if he's a disinformation agent or not, but all the stuff
pretty sure he is.
Sound like, that this is new, and I found we knew that stuff years and years ago.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people come into it haven't done their homework, and
right.
even DeLong, was presenting photos and things we knew were hoaxes long ago. And so, it's interesting because this new wave of people, they don't do their due diligence. They just jump to conclusions. And so, talk to the old guys. We know what we're talking about.
Yep. Hey, perfect segue for my next question, Ben. Well done.
Okay.
In your 40 years of doing investigations, would you ever say that there was maybe a source of info or a person that you would say kind of like mentored you through the beginnings or even, up until now? Is there anybody that you've looked up to that's kind of, helped guide you along?
Well, I would say the one that comes to mind is Ray Stanford. Tony and I met him, gosh, I guess like 16, 17 years ago. And Ray was one of the, well before anybody else. Ray did investigations using gravimeters, magnetometers. Always had a camera around his neck. He filmed many UFOs from airplanes. He has a lot of data that been trying to get put out there. But Ray was really good at mentoring. When Tony and I used to go over and see him before he passed away, he would talk about, how he has all these magnetic tapes and things of how the surrounding environment would change when these things were around and what they were affecting and things that nobody thought of at the time, especially in the 60s. And so, he was good at showing that the instrumented study of UFOs is really the only way to try to get a handle on this because it affects the environment. He seemed to know when they were around. There's some people that seem to, I don't call them attractors, but they look around enough to see things. And so Ray was there with his camera around. He has 8 and 16 millimeter camera on his neck all the time, an Argus C3. And he took a lot of great pictures, like the one that we presented. Ray took a picture of the dynamite shack at Socorro, and in the background was an egg-shaped craft with 3 landing gear visible, exactly like Lonnie and Zamora had described. He took that picture, I think, a week after the event when Dr. Hynek and him were on site. But he was a good mentor because he called BS when he saw it, and he showed us evidence of things that I would have never thought of to look into, the magnetic response, the gravitational response, the lensing effect behind these things, how the atmosphere doesn't quite look right, because most of these craft, I think, they're surrounded by like a static shell, maybe plasma or something, but a lot of times you can't tell the shape of the thing because the energy is so bright. Whatever's powering these things, it could be any shape, and it seems like there's a lot of things, and recently it came out that they're supposedly through the government that there's intelligent plasma, like intelligent plasma. And now we're going in a whole nother direction. How the hell are you going to figure out intelligent plasma, which is what, the 5th state of matter, I think. But Ray was a good mentor. Ray was really good at just looking and analyzing the data and capturing the data and kind of presenting things in a way that he could back up with evidence.
It does amaze me how they can just boldly throw these statements out into the air without much to, substantiate the speculation. I mean, I'm open
Yeah.
to the idea of intelligent plasma, but I want to hear more than just the statement that it is. Maybe a little bit
Right.
of science or something. Heaven forbid.
Right.
Um, Jumping into back when you were initially getting involved with MUFON, um, was that about 40 some odd years ago?
I think in the 90s, I remember, and I guess, I was an investigator for a while. Before I was an investigator, I was at the MUFON symposium in Crystal City. I think I was with MUFON then, but it was in the 90s, and I was the security officer. So I had a walkie-talkie, and I just made sure the books were locked up and that people didn't sneak in. And uh, that was kind of when I really started getting into it. And then Sue Switek, who's still the Virginia MUFON director, became an investigator and started taking cases and, got some really interesting cases, then became chief of investigator so I could farm out the cases, try to pick off the best ones so I could look at those myself. But yeah, MUFON, it was a good experience because a lot of the cases you could look at them at the beginning and tell, the guy starts off by saying I was smoking crack or I was drinking, and then you got to look at it through a different lens, but a lot of the cases were pretty solid and very unusual. And yeah, I had some abduction cases which are almost impossible to investigate because either it happened or didn't happen, but you can't prove it either way. You can't prove, like I know Travis Walton, I've talked to him. I believe he believes that what happened happened, but I don't know, unless
Mm-hmm.
I film an abduction or I'm abducted myself, that's just one of the subjects that I really can't go into because I don't have any firsthand experience, and there's really never any evidence besides some of these implants that Dr. Lear had pulled out of some people to show that something happened. It could be happening because if you think that there's multiple civilizations and then maybe they're coming from the stars and maybe they're coming from right here, just in another. So I studied string theory, and that postulates about 22 dimensions. And if everything's vibrating at a certain velocity, string theory postulates that everything's a tiny string vibrating at a certain frequency. It could be multiple universes on top of ours, just vibrating at a different frequency, and we can't see it. It's kind of like our vision is very limited in the spectrum that's available.
Right.
Wolves and dogs and cats can see things that we can't, but these things could be right in front of us or right over our head, and we'd never know it because they're in a different frequency, they're in a different infrared or some type of light that we can't see. Because a lot of these things show up in infrared, but you don't see them. People that film with infrared. So, yeah, I mean, MUFON was a good starting point for me, and you know, had a lot of things that went through. It's tough to kind of stay focused when a lot of other things are happening in your life. I just had a just battled prostate cancer, and I think I'm through that. So, life throws curveballs. You just got to keep going.
Yeah, I always say life happens at the speed of life.
Right.
I mean, nothing you can do but hold on sometimes.
Exactly.
Back in the early days of the MUFON affiliation, did they actually have like an official training regimen at all to bring investigators on?
Yeah, you had a manual that was about that thick, and you had to go through. You took a test. You really want to know what you're talking about. You don't want to go out and see Jupiter and Venus when they align in the sky and go, "Oh my God, I just photographed a UFO," when you don't know, your science. So my focus has always been because I study physics, philosophy, religion, geography. I remember when friend of mine was writing a book, and Cheryl Costa, she had asked me if there was a correlation between UFO sightings. I told her, look at bodies of water, look at where places where the indigenous population, like Indians, said were sacred, and she fed that into the computer, and it lined up perfectly with a lot of these hot spots, near bodies of water and near places where were sacred by the cultures that came before us. they knew something, that we didn't know and that or we've lost in time. So yeah, MUFON had pretty good training. Yeah, there was always training available at all the conferences. You just want to, you don't want to go out and give a disposition to a case that's completely wrong or be biased or anything like that. Sorry, my dog is in my lap just pushing the table. So yeah, I mean, you got to know your stuff. You can't jump to conclusions. You can't come in with a bias. If you don't believe in any of this, that's bad. And if you believe it wholeheartedly, that's bad too, because you're going to form your own opinion based on what you believe instead of the reality and the evidence that's in front of you.
Totally understood. Yep, there's a lot of folks running around with biases nowadays. But Ben, back when you first transitioned, I guess going through your training and getting certified to be a MUFON investigator, like what did it feel like to cross the line from being an interested observer to say certified investigator and going to your first investigation? What was that like?
Well, you had to be cautious. I always told the witnesses that whatever you tell me, whether you want your name out or not, as an investigator, I'm going to guard your privacy. I won't give up your location. You have to make them feel comfortable talking to you. And then, when you go, some you did on the phone because there wasn't much to go there and see. But some you went to the site and, you have to figure out a lot of if somebody sees something at a location, did any neighbors see it? Was anything happening at that time? Was there a meteor shower? Was there an eclipse or, whatever the case may be? But yeah, you just have to, you go in with an open mind and you try to make the witness comfortable. And sometimes, you get the impression that they really believe it happened. And sometimes you get the impression that they're kind of making stuff up. I remember one time Tony and I went out and met this gentleman, and he said, "I see UFOs all the time." So we go out to his location, said, "Okay, take us to where you see them." We go out to this hill. There they are now, and I'm like sitting on Flight Trader, going, "Okay, that's the flight path for Dulles Airport. Those are all airplanes. Is
Hmm.
this what you see every night?" "No, those aren't airplanes." And I'm like, "Yes, they are." Because they're on flight. I can tell you the flight and where it's going, and it has the red and green light and blinking every 2 seconds, and it has, a transponder that's giving me the signal. So, sometimes you go out and you kind of waste your time, but there's some interesting ones. We went on one where I'll never forget this one. It was near Fort Hood, and we went out there, and the woman was retired military intelligence and had like 15 dogs, and they were all dangerous dogs, and they were in this big pen, and there was an alpha male that looked like a wolf in there. And I'm looking at him. We're sitting in these chairs about 100 yards, maybe 50 yards from the dogs. I'm like, if those dogs go out, are we in trouble? And she goes, "Yeah, they'll kill you." I'm like, I look at Tony. I'm like, fastest one to the car wins if those dogs get out. It was a flimsy fence. The dog would put his legs on it, and the whole thing looked like it was going to collapse. But they're blocking the whole time, and we're hearing machine gun fire from Fort Hood. But when we were there, she had told us she was seeing these balls of light. And so I had taken pictures near my car, and sure enough, in some of the pictures was a sphere with a star inside of it. It was kind of orange, and a star kind of touching the edges. And Bruce Maccabee was alive then, and he looked at him because I was like, the sun was filtering through the trees, but I'm like, I don't think this is a lens flare because the sun's not on me, and I can see where the sun is. And I took multiple angles to make sure that it wasn't the sun. And Bruce said, "No, that doesn't look like an artifact of the camera. That looks like you've got something." And they're really unusual looking. And so that kind of made her story more believable. And we were there for hours with the dogs barking, and we ended the night. I pulled out a bottle of bourbon, and we drank bourbon for like an hour and listened to her tell us stories. But yeah, that was a case where we actually pulled some evidence ourselves that these balls of light she described before I photographed them were out there. I don't have no idea what they were. They were about this big, but I've never seen orange ball with a white star inside of it. Never seen a camera produce an artifact like that. Lens flares are pretty easy to dismiss. If you're facing a bright light source, you're going to get lens flares. I've done it all the time. People used to send me photos. I'll be like, "Lens flare, lens flare, lens flare." You're facing the sun, you're facing the moon, you're facing a lamppost, and you're not going to get good data if you got a bright light source in front of you. The camera will do all kinds of things. But yeah, the cases were interesting. Abduction case. One time we went out to a woman's house and she had woods behind her house. And she said her and her son would be abducted. And I went out and there was this marshy area, but there was a big circular indentation in the middle of this forest where it looked like something had laid down. It was huge. It was like a 50-foot circle. And then looking up, there it looked like the tree branches were broken. So I was saying, well, if something came down, this is where it came down and sat. I just couldn't prove she was abducted, but she believed it, and her son would say stories. It's kind of like Ray's kids drew pictures of this is the guy that visits me in my bed at night, and they were always look like leprechauns, but Ray believed that they were being visited also, and Ray's had some experiences like that. And then they both had marks on their body that were similar to these types of stories. So yeah, just interesting. It's interesting going out in the field. It just takes a lot of time. Sometimes we had to drive a long way, 90 miles or something to get to it. So don't have that kind of time now. Working all the time, retired, working again, that kind of thing.
Oh, you one of those guys that just can't stay retired, huh, Ben?
It's pretty boring.
Yeah.
And then, my situation commanded that I needed to do the job I'm doing now to help some people out. But yeah, I mean, when I tried to re-interview for a position because I got laid off because of the effects of COVID for my telecom company, and going from making six figures to zero is pretty brutal. So I applied for like 200 jobs, got one interview. It's age discrimination is alive and well. 30 years internet experience, nobody wanted to talk to me. That's very counterintuitive. Nobody ever asked if I take less money, which I would because I get retirement.
Mm-hmm.
If I take less money, I'd still be making good money, but nobody, I guess they look at my birthday and go, no, this guy's too old.
I hear you on that one, Ben. Yeah, it's tough getting older and staying employed. It's also tough being a whistleblower and staying employed. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep. Life happening at the speed of life.
yep.
Uh, let's see. My next question. What are some of the most common tests or obstacles you face when you're doing investigations and you're trying to separate, say, psychological phenomena or hoaxes from true anomalies?
Um, well, first you have to see if the witness was taking any substances that might have caused, him to say the things they are. Then if there's photographs or film, you got to dig into the metadata. Because if they say, I took this a week ago with this camera, and the metadata tells you this is a 2-year-old picture with a different camera, that blows the thing right out of the water right there. So if I get one lie, I'm very dubious about the case. So a lot of times it's the character of the witness. Were they getting high? Were they drunk? Are they really into the subject? Because it's like the guy that saw the airplanes. He was really into it, really wanted to be on TV and knew that Tony and I had been on Hangar One and a bunch of shows on TV, and he wanted to be famous. And I'm like, that's killing this case right away when you tell me these things because I never got into this to be famous or be on TV or make money because, first of all, if you become a UFO investigator, be famous and rich, you're going to be poor and unknown because it doesn't pay unless you go on tour like a Bob Lazar or something, which I still don't buy his story.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if that counts. I mean, I still like your original statement. I don't know that these people are actual UFO investigators.
Right. Yeah, when you monetize it, that's a red flag to me. When you get on all the TV shows and you'll take money to say anything and you'll say things like even Elizondo has presented things that I knew were hoaxes and then he had to backtrack and go, yeah, somebody gave me this and said it. It was kind of like, and I won't say the name because I don't want to disparage somebody, but they put this thing on and said, here's a case where the Army was investigating this UFO and it was little Army soldiers and a model. But they thought it was a real photo of the Army, like in Roswell or something, but it was little soldiers and a model.
That's unbelievable.
So, yeah, I mean, and a lot of this is because they want to be famous and they want to make money on it. And that that's always been a red flag because I don't try to get on TV. I was invited to be on TV when all that happened and haven't been on any shows in a while. That's fine. I can do my own thing. But, I was just trying to get to the truth. And that's a real serious UFO investigator just wants to know the truth. We don't want all these other distractions. We just want to find out what the hell is going on. Because it's weird enough as it is. And, you got to figure if it's ET and they got here from somewhere else, they're way ahead of us. It's one thing to be 500 years more advanced than us, but 550,000, 500,000, if they're that far advanced, I mean, it's the old saying that when they go by Earth, they roll up their windows because they don't want anything to do with us. I did have an interesting case I was working on. The main investigator's son, he was in the Air Force, told me that his father had been told by a top level person because he got high up in the military intelligence, but he was told that a civilization had told us that you can go anywhere in your solar system, but don't leave your solar system because we don't want you out in space because of the way you are now. Still killing each other, still fighting wars. I think if you're here from another planet, you've gotten over all that. You've overcome your atomic age. You're not killing each other. You're more empathetic and conscious. And then you come on Earth, you're like, holy crap, man, these guys got a long ways to go before we want to talk to them.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of right there along with you. As a matter of fact, earlier you had said that, to the tune of, that a lot of this stuff just, seems like it's ours, which I'm kind of right there too. I think we've accomplished a lot and covered it up for far too long. And not to say that there's nothing off planet, in planet. I'm open to all possibilities, but I have a strong belief that a lot of this stuff is just ours, and they've been covering it up. Is kind of where my brain is at.
Yeah, I mean the Tic Tac. I remember what's the guy's the scientist, the physicist that was anti-UFO, and now he's like, oh, UFOs are real.
Is that Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Boy, did he flip!
Yeah,
And
that
why?
happened. Probably because he got a check.
Yeah, he's on TV all the time talking about it. He completely flipped. And I talked to Faber. I can't remember if it was on the phone or at a conference, but the Tic Tac he's described, if that was Chinese or Russian, then we'd all be speaking Chinese. I just think that some of these things are so far advanced. If one of our adversaries had it, they would have deployed it by now. Because if you have something that can move like that, you can pretty much win the war and like that. And instead, I think some of these things, there could be a secret society that, or some type of civilization that's in the ocean or is here, could have been born on this planet or come here 50,000 years ago and it's just hidden ever since. But, I think ET is one solution. I think there are probably interdimensional or ultra terrestrials, but you can't say it's only one thing. It's probably many, many different things. And some things so bizarre that you can't, like intelligent plasma, how do you wrap your head around that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to, some of these texts that, oh, geez, I'm kind of losing my train of thought of where you were just at there. We were talking about.
You said some of them were ours. Some of them might be ours.
It's all right. I'll go to the next one, Ben. There's a lot going on in my head on that when you triggered something, but then I lost it because it was like I was running with. I was like, he's right. Next question. Going into a different batch here. After years of looking into the unknown, Ben, is there a particular treasure or a deeper understanding you've gained about human existence itself?
Yeah, the world's a lot more mysterious. Not the world, but reality is a lot more mysterious than you think it is. And some of these witnesses are humbled by what they see. I think that the Brookings Institute in '54, I think, or '64, presented a paper that said you can't tell the world if you know UFOs are real because they'll flip out, religions will crumble, monetary system, all this crap. I don't believe. Ever since Star Trek, probably 70% of the population believes there's life out there. and a good portion of it believes it's visited us here. So if we reveal that, which I still don't think will happen, but it's not going to freak people out. It's not like Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast in '39, where people did freak out and started burning the houses and shooting guns in the sky. But I think from there's a lot of questions that could come up. If you're a devout Christian, you might want to know: did Jesus stand on all these planets? Was there a Jesus figure that stood on appeared on these planets and taught the same thing that was taught here? If you're a Buddhist, was there a Buddha? I mean, it kind of touches a lot of things. And a lot of I remember talking to a long time ago a devout Catholic that said there's no life anywhere. You won't even find a microbe anywhere else. I'm like, that's really God wouldn't allow that. I'm like, if there's a God, life everywhere makes a lot more sense than if you just put life on Earth and nowhere else. That's a big waste of real estate. And so, and I think life is everywhere. Mathematically, the Drake equation, pretty much tells you there's hundreds of millions of civilizations out there. But it just gives you an idea that, um, as far as religion or philosophy, there's almost nothing that you can't imagine that might be true. And from its perspective of humanity, I think if somebody got here from another planet, they survived themselves. We, on the other hand, are still, I don't know if we're going to make it. I think that a lot of things going on, especially these days, we're about to do ourselves in if we don't take care of the planet and we don't take care of each other. And there's a lot of civilization probably didn't make it. And I think there's things coming, self-replicating, self-repairing objects that come here, but the civilization that created them is long since extinct. So it
Wow.
gives you an idea. It kind of makes you perceive things in a different way, in a much bigger picture.
Hmm.
It's like if you live on an island, all you know is the island. But if you see the world from space, all the astronauts, everybody's been to space, comes back with a whole different perspective. The pale blue dot, which is just a small little place in a fairly young solar system. Um, so since our solar system is so young, I'm sure there's advanced civilizations probably know, just like how we can tell by looking at through our telescopes and seeing the chemical composition of planets, that's the planet that's in the Goldilocks zone from the sun, not too close, not too far. Probably has liquid water. There's liquid water, there's life. I believe there was life on Mars. I believe there's life on Europa under the ice. And if there was life, if we find life on Mars or Europa, mathematically, it's everywhere. And I talked to the guy that did the 1976 mission to Mars test for life, where they found methane and other evidences of life. I called him and he said, "Yeah, my test did show life, and NASA just made something up about, nah, it wasn't really, blah blah blah." But he said my test was designed to find life. And in 1976, we found life on Mars. And then I remember talking, and my friend Rich Hoffman, I remember said once about water on Mars, and he was like, "Water on Mars? What are you talking about?" Now we know there's water on Mars. It might be under the surface. There's water at the polar caps, but as we go through time, we keep finding out things we thought weren't true, and they're absolutely true, and that's going to keep happening. Did that
Yeah,
answer the
thank
question?
goodness. Yes, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. Um, ooh, now I'm just
Good thing you have
yeah.
notes.
Exactly. Yeah, I wind up paying attention to you and losing my place. Um, if you could pass on one piece of advice to the next generation of investigators stepping up to the line, what would that be, Ben?
Do your freaking homework. Learn the cases that have come before. Learn what the investigators did before you. This is not brand new. You're not discovering things that have never been seen before. Read the books that read our book. Read the books of investigators that did investigations, that know what they're talking about. Learn about the sciences, understand physics. Um, you know, don't look at a light in the sky and go, it's a UFO, especially these days with drones and satellites and things like that. But you got to do your homework, do your due diligence. If you keep posting this crap about the Black Knight satellite, you know, there was no Black Knight satellite. It was a wayward thermal balloon that got loose from a space shuttle mission that they went and finally captured it again, or made it burned up in the atmosphere. But there was a guy, I won't mention his name, that did a whole movie about the Black Knight satellite, and there is no Black Knight satellite. It was a wayward thermal blanket. Um, stuff like that. I just, it's like the German Bell. There was no the Glock. When they show these concrete structures, as they said, held to the Glock in Germany, those were water containment units, and there's no evidence there was a time traveling German device in the 30s because they would have gone back in time and won the war if that was possible. Stuff like that. I just, when people repost stuff that's already been proven false, it's like when somebody says, we didn't go to the moon. I'm like, oh my God, stop saying that. You can see the lander with our satellites. Every mission to the moon has photographed the lunar lander. The Chinese, the Russians, everybody has sent something up there, has photographed our equipment on the moon. So, don't believe everything that you believe is true, and don't believe something that's on the internet because it's on the internet.
Yeah, it'd be nice if people had better discernment nowadays. I feel like most of the stuff you see on the internet is it's a rumor mill, People see something, they enjoy it, they apply no discernment to find out if it's true or not, but they'll certainly repost it.
Yeah, it's reposting. It's not homework or due diligence or originality. It's like, oh yeah, this happened because that guy said it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Ben, I want to thank you very much for your time here today and giving the audience some insight as to, how you walked the path that's bringing you to Snippy this year. But before we go, I do absolutely want you to share with the audience how they might follow your work, what your social media platforms might be, and that type of stuff, sir.
Yeah, I have the UFO guys on Facebook. Our book, which is now titled Socorro UFO, is on Amazon. I have the original one I published, self-published, 1964 Socorro UFO Landing with Humanoids, which is, I believe I have it on eBay. But yeah, they can find me on the UFO guys. I've been on 5 different TV networks. So if you see somebody who looks like me on TV, it was me. Yeah, I'm pretty available. I'm out on most platforms. I'm on TikTok. I was on Instagram, but I got so annoyed with all the beautiful women that wanted to know me. The Russian and Chinese bots.
There you go.
You get 1,000 requests in a day, and none of them are real. They're all AI. And I'm not on sites to date anybody, but the UFO guys is the best way to reach me. The books are on Amazon and eBay. And Snippy, is a great conference because I hope there's no clouds this year because I really want to see the Milky Way. It was really cloudy last year.
Mm-hmm.
But great conference, really good people. Met a lot of, met all the speakers. I'd never known Sev Talk. She's a wonderful woman. Tony and Katie are friends of mine, and thankfully drive me around because that's in the middle of nowhere. But that's what's the beauty of it. It's in the middle where there's no ambient light.
Yeah.
Kerry puts on a good conference. There's a lot of really good people. People should come out and see it. Definitely, go to the website, buy a ticket, come out and see it. Yeah, I mean, it's just a journey that never ends. There'll be people after me doing this. You just gotta have faith in what you're doing and know how to do it. Bring the tools to do these things, and believe your own stuff. Don't believe something somebody else presents to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. People have to do the work. They forget the value of the labor. But
DD,
yeah,
call it DD.
yeah, I think this year's Snippy event is going to be really big. I went to the Contact in the Desert event this year and ran across a lot of people from the UFO X spaces where there's a lot of chats that occur, and everybody had a grand old time. And we have a sea of people. I think we have 25 people that are coming to the Snippy event that met at the Contact event. So.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like there's some really organic growth going, and it's nice to experience. We've been online for far too long, and people need to appreciate the value of human contact and getting out in the field. Doing the work.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Ben.
Not sitting in a building, be out in the desert, under the stars. That's a beautiful place.
Absolutely. Ben, thank you very much for being here today, sir. And I look forward to crossing paths with you again at the Snippy event in Mosca, Colorado. Everybody, thank you for joining us. And, sir, have an excellent day. Be well.
Yep. See you there. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.